"Do not answer that signal," the old navigator whispered, his voice shaking for the first time in 40 years. "Because if someone is still broadcasting from the Black Rift, it means the ancient enemy never truly left." Every screen inside the Galactic Council chamber flickered at once. The polished marble floor beneath hundreds of delegates trembled ever so slightly, not from an explosion, but from the silence that followed. For nearly 12,000 years, the Black Rift had been nothing more than a forbidden mark on every star chart ever printed. No merchant crossed it. No explorer mapped it. Even pirates gave it a wide berth. Entire civilizations had built myths around that stretch of empty darkness, warning their children that some places in the galaxy were not abandoned because they were empty, but because something had chosen to leave them untouched. Until today, Chancellor Varesh stared at the holographic projection suspended above the chamber. His four silver eyes refused to blink as one emergency beacon after another vanished from the map. Fleet Orion gone. The Hellion defense line gone. Frontier Station 12, no response. None of the icons exploded. They simply faded away, one after another, as though someone had quietly erased them from existence. The chamber remained frozen until Admiral Soren Tau of the Vesk Dominion cleared his throat. "There has to be a mistake. Our long-range sensors are among the finest in the galaxy." A nervous technician swallowed hard before answering. "Sir, every sensor array is reporting the same thing." Another officer leaned closer to his console. "We're also receiving civilian distress calls from colonies nearly 300 light-years apart. They all describe the same unidentified fleet." Varesh folded his hands behind his back, forcing himself to sound calm. "Show me." The hologram expanded. At first, there appeared to be nothing at all, only a curtain of darkness stretching across the stars. Then tiny points of light began disappearing as if an invisible shadow were moving through the galaxy itself. The technician's voice became barely audible. "That is an interference." No one answered him. They did not need to. Everyone in the room could see it now. Something unimaginably large was moving beyond the edge of known space. Then another transmission forced its way through every communication channel. Static filled the chamber before settling into a low, rhythmic pulse that sounded almost mechanical. A translator struggled for several seconds before producing only 7 words. "The harvest resumes." Resistance remained statistically unnecessary. Every delegate looked toward someone else, silently hoping another civilization recognized the message. None did. Admiral Tal finally broke the silence. "Whoever they are, they have no idea who they're threatening." Before anyone could agree, another alert interrupted him. "Emergency report," the technician announced, his hands trembling over the controls. "The Third Dominion fleet engaged the unidentified vessels 17 minutes ago." Varesh stepped forward. "Status." The room waited. No surviving transmissions. Another pause. No debris. Someone near the back whispered, "That's impossible." No one corrected him. At the far edge of the chamber, a junior diplomatic aide quietly raised one hand. "Mr. Chancellor," Varesh turned. "What is it?" The young aide hesitated before speaking. "Earth just sent a message." Several delegates exchanged puzzled looks. Humanity had remained unusually quiet since the first alarms arrived. No speeches. No demands. No panic. "Read it," Varesh ordered. The aide opened the encrypted transmission, expecting pages of questions or requests for assistance. Instead, only a single sentence appeared on the enormous display. "Admiral Nathan Brooks, Terran Defense Command. Arrival estimated in 23 minutes. Do not engage the enemy until we get there." For several long seconds, no one spoke. Then scattered laughter echoed through the chamber. Admiral Tal smiled with open disbelief. "Humans," he scoffed. "The galaxy is collapsing, and they think they're coming to save us." More delegates joined the laughter. Even Varesh allowed himself the faintest shake of his head. 23 minutes felt meaningless against an enemy that had already erased fleets older than human civilization itself. Yet somewhere far beyond the Council's sensors, dozens of quiet gray warships were already changing course. And aboard the lead vessel, Admiral Nathan Brooks stood alone on the bridge, watching the stars without saying a single word. The laughter inside the council chamber lasted exactly 11 seconds before every light in the room dimmed. The massive holographic map flickered again, and another line of defensive outposts disappeared without warning. This time nobody laughed. Chancellor Varesh slowly turned toward the tactical display. Report. The chief analyst inhaled deeply before answering. The enemy has crossed another 120 light years in less than 6 minutes. Admiral Soren Tau frowned. Impossible. Nothing moves that fast without tearing itself apart. Apparently, the analyst replied quietly. They do not follow the laws we understand. A heavy silence settled over the chamber. Every representative had spent decades believing their fleets represented the highest level of military power ever assembled. Now those beliefs were evaporating faster than the disappearing icons on the screen. One by one, emergency transmissions poured into the council network. Civilian governors pleaded for evacuation. Freight captains abandoned cargo routes. Entire orbital stations requested permission to break treaty regulations simply to escape. Varesh rubbed his temples. How long until they reach Prime? Another technician answered without looking up. 48 minutes, assuming they maintain their current speed. Admiral Tal slammed one fist against the polished table. Then we fight here. We still have the combined defense fleet. Before anyone could respond, another transmission arrived from the flagship Resolute Dawn. Fleet Marshal Helena Voss appeared on the screen, exhaustion visible across her face. Smoke drifted through the bridge behind her, while alarms echoed faintly in the background. Chancellor, she said, struggling to remain composed. We engaged the unidentified fleet exactly 9 minutes ago. Varesh leaned forward. What did you learn? Helena hesitated. Nothing worked. The room remained silent. Energy weapons had no measurable effect. Electronic warfare accomplished nothing. Long-range missiles never reached their targets. They did not even attempt to defend themselves. Admiral Tal stared at the display. Then how did they stop your attack? Helena looked away for only a second. They simply kept moving. No one understood what that meant. She continued before anyone could interrupt. It was like trying to stop a tidal wave by throwing stones into the ocean. They ignored every tactical doctrine we have ever studied. Suddenly, another officer rushed onto her bridge. His face had lost all color. He whispered something into Helena's ear. She closed her eyes briefly before facing the council again. The 7th Escort Wing has disappeared from sensors. Varesh immediately asked, destroyed? Helena slowly shook her head. No evidence of destruction. They are simply gone. The transmission ended without another word. Across the chamber, delegates who had argued for retaliation only minutes earlier now avoided looking at one another. Every civilization present had spent centuries competing over territory, influence, and military prestige. None of those rivalries seemed important anymore. A younger council member finally broke the silence. Perhaps the humans were right. Admiral Tal turned sharply. About what? About waiting. Tal scoffed. You are seriously suggesting we trust a civilization that has been part of this council for barely 2 generations? Before the debate could continue, another encrypted signal arrived from Earth. Unlike the previous message, this one contained a flight path. Hundreds of small gray markers advanced steadily across the map. No dramatic formation. No overwhelming armada. Just 36 ships traveling in complete silence. Admiral Tal laughed again. But this time there was uncertainty behind it. 36 vessels? That is all they sent. Varesh studied the formation carefully. There are no escorts. No reserve fleet either, another officer added. They are coming alone. A communications specialist suddenly looked up from her console. Chancellor, we intercepted something. From the enemy? She nodded slowly. Their fleet changed course exactly 32 seconds after Earth's ships entered sensor range. Varesh narrowed his eyes. Toward Prime. No. The technician swallowed hard. Toward the humans. For the first time since the crisis began, every voice inside the chamber fell completely silent. The ancient enemy had ignored the largest military alliance in known space. It had ignored the capital of the galaxy itself. Instead, every vessel had adjusted its course toward Admiral Nathan Brooks and the 36 quiet ships still approaching from the darkness between the stars. Admiral Nathan Brooks watched the tactical display without changing his expression. 36 Terran ships drifted through the darkness in perfect formation, their engines burning with quiet precision instead of theatrical power. Around him, the bridge of the TSS Resolute remained calm. Nobody raised their voice. Nobody rushed between stations. Every officer moved with the steady rhythm of people who had rehearsed moments like this for years. Lieutenant Grace Donovan broke the silence first. Enemy fleet has completed its course correction, Admiral. Every confirmed contact is now converging on us. Brooks nodded once. Distance, 8.4 million miles and closing. Commander Marcus Hale folded his arms. The Council expected them to attack Prime. Brooks looked out through the forward observation window where countless stars stretched across the black. No, they never cared about Prime. Marcus frowned. Then why change course? Brooks answered almost absent-mindedly. Because they finally noticed we arrived. Nobody on the bridge asked another question. They trusted him enough to know he would explain only when it mattered. Thousands of miles away, inside the Council archives buried beneath Prime, another story was quietly unfolding. Dr. Olivia Carter hurried through rows of ancient storage vaults, her footsteps echoing across polished metal floors. Unlike the politicians above, Olivia had never believed the Black Rift was simply another mystery of space. She had spent 15 years studying civilizations that disappeared long before the modern galaxy existed. Most historians dismissed those records as mythology. She never did. An elderly archivist looked up as she entered. Dr. Carter, the Council ordered all non-essential personnel to evacuate. She did not slow down. Open Vault 12. The archivist hesitated. Those records have been sealed for over 9,000 years. Olivia met his eyes. Exactly. After several long seconds, the old man entered a security code. Thick alloy doors slowly separated with a deep mechanical rumble. Dust floated through the stale air as forgotten shelves emerged from the darkness. There were no glowing alien computers waiting inside. Only physical records preserved on crystal tablets and metallic data cylinders from civilizations that no longer existed. Olivia whispered to herself, "Please let somebody have written the truth down." Back in orbit, Chancellor Varesh stood inside the Council Command Center, watching humanity's tiny fleet continue forward without altering speed. Admiral Tal crossed his arms again. "They still have time to retreat." Varesh did not answer. Instead, he watched another strange report appear on his console. "Human vessels have not raised shields," one operator announced. Another added, "No offensive systems are charging either." Tal laughed uneasily. Either they are incredibly brave or unbelievably reckless. Before anyone could respond, every monitor in the room flashed crimson. An automated warning echoed throughout the chamber. Unknown transmission intercepted. Static filled the speakers before a deep mechanical voice emerged with chilling clarity. Designation confirmed. Descendants located. Every person in the room froze. The translator continued. Primary objective unchanged. Varesh slowly looked toward the projection of the Terran fleet. Descendants. Nobody answered. At that exact moment, Olivia finally activated the first surviving crystal archive. Ancient symbols flowed across the display before automatically translating into modern galactic standard. Her heartbeat quickened as she read the opening line. "To any civilization that survives after us, if humanity still exists, do not allow them to fight alone." Olivia stepped backward in disbelief. That cannot be right. She opened another archive. Then another. Different civilizations. Different eras. Every warning repeated the same impossible message. Humanity was not mentioned as another young species. Humanity was mentioned as something the ancient enemy had encountered before. She immediately opened a secure channel to Admiral Brooks. The connection established after only one ring. Brooks appeared exactly as before, calm, standing with his hands behind his back. Olivia struggled to find the words. "Nathan, I think the entire history of this galaxy is wrong." Brooks looked at her for several quiet seconds before giving the smallest hint of a knowing smile. "I was wondering how much longer it would take someone else to discover it." Dr. Olivia Carter stared at the glowing crystal archive as thousands of translated symbols streamed across the screen. Every recovered record pointed toward the same impossible conclusion. Entire civilizations had known humanity long before modern galactic history claimed Earth had even developed spaceflight. She opened one final archive, older than all the others, and a weathered voice recording filled the quiet vault. "If you hear this, then we failed. We erased every reference to humanity because we believed hiding them would protect the future. We were wrong." Olivia froze. The recording continued. The enemy does not hunt worlds. It hunts memory. If it ever discovers humanity survived, it will return. She immediately forwarded every file through an encrypted military channel. On the bridge of the TSS Resolute, Lieutenant Grace Donovan looked up from her console. Incoming classified package from Dr. Carter. Admiral Nathan Brooks simply replied, "Display it." As the ancient records appeared across the tactical table, Commander Marcus Hale slowly exhaled. "So it is true." Brooks gave a small nod. "It was always true." Marcus looked directly at him. "Then every government on Earth knew." "Only a handful of people," Brooks answered. "The fewer who knew, the longer the secret survived." Before another question could be asked, warning tones echoed across the bridge. "Enemy formation has changed," Grace reported. "Multiple groups are accelerating." Brooks stepped closer to the display. Hundreds of hostile contacts separated into perfect geometric formations, but instead of surrounding the Terran ships, they opened a narrow corridor through the middle of their own fleet. Marcus frowned. "Why would they make a path for us?" Brooks watched silently for several seconds. "Because someone wants to talk." At the same moment, inside the Council Command Center, confusion spread through every level of leadership. Admiral Soren Tau pointed toward the live tactical display. "They are letting the humans pass." Chancellor Varesh narrowed his eyes. "No, they are inviting them." "That makes no sense," Tal argued. "They ignored every fleet we sent." Before Varesh could answer, every communication array across Prime activated without warning. A single transmission overrode every frequency. The same mechanical voice returned, but this time it spoke only one destination. "Human command vessel. Advance." Every delegate looked toward the Terran fleet drifting into the corridor that the enemy itself had opened. Nobody could explain what they were witnessing. Grace looked toward Brooks. "Orders. Maintain speed. No shields. No weapons." Brooks shook his head. "Not yet." 36 Terran ships continued moving forward while millions of alien citizens watched in disbelief through live broadcasts. The distance between the two forces dropped below 1 million miles. Every military analyst expected an immediate attack. Instead, the enemy formation remained perfectly still. Then something even stranger happened. A colossal vessel emerged from the darkness behind the front line. It dwarfed everything around it, moving with quiet precision rather than overwhelming force. The bridge lights dimmed as an encrypted signal reached only the TSS Resolute. Grace decoded it within seconds. She looked back at Brooks with visible disbelief. "It is addressed to you personally." Marcus stepped closer. "Read it." Grace swallowed before speaking aloud. "Nathan Brooks. Descendant confirmed. The agreement has expired. Present the keeper or witness the final reckoning." The bridge fell completely silent. Marcus slowly turned toward Brooks. "What agreement?" Brooks did not answer immediately. His eyes remained fixed on the enormous vessel filling the forward view. Finally, he spoke with the same calm voice he had carried since the crisis began. "The agreement that allowed humanity to disappear." Before anyone could ask another question, every hostile ship powered up simultaneously, and for the first time since entering the system, the 36 Terran vessels began accelerating directly toward the waiting fleet. The 36 Terran ships accelerated together without breaking formation, slipping through the corridor opened by the unknown fleet, while millions across the galaxy watched in complete disbelief. No weapons fired. No warnings echoed across space. The silence itself became more unsettling than any battle ever recorded. On the bridge of the TSS Resolute, Lieutenant Grace Donovan kept her eyes fixed on the tactical display. 500,000 miles. Commander Marcus Hale looked toward Admiral Nathan Brooks. "If they wanted us gone, they had every chance already." Brooks answered without looking away from the stars. "That is exactly why they did not." Another alert appeared. "The command vessel is transmitting visual contact only." Grace hesitated. "No encryption. They want everyone to see this." Brooks nodded once. "Accept it." The bridge lights dimmed as the main display came alive. A towering figure emerged from the darkness, its appearance neither mechanical nor biological in any familiar sense. Its calm, unwavering gaze settled directly on Brooks. The mechanical voice was gone. When it spoke, its tone carried something far older. "Nathan Brooks. Bloodline verified." Marcus exchanged a confused glance with Grace. Brooks remained silent. The figure continued. The Keepers promised your species would never rebuild. Brooks finally spoke. The Keepers are gone. We know. Another long pause followed before the figure asked. Then who guards the gate? Across the council chamber, every delegate stared at the same transmission. Chancellor Varesh leaned closer to the screen. What gate? Nobody answered. Dr. Olivia Carter, still inside the ancient archive beneath Prime, felt her pulse quicken. She searched frantically through the recovered records until one damaged star map expanded across her terminal. Hidden beneath layers of erased data sat a single label that every previous historian had overlooked. Soul Gate. Olivia whispered to herself. Earth was never just a homeworld. She immediately opened another secure channel. Nathan, I found something. The archives call our solar system a gate, not a colony. Brooks listened quietly. Keep reading. Olivia scanned another paragraph. It says the Keepers volunteered to erase themselves from history to protect whatever was sealed beyond the gate. Her voice slowed as she reached the final sentence. Only humanity accepted the watch. The transmission ended before Brooks could respond. At that exact moment, alarms sounded throughout the bridge. Grace looked up sharply. Energy surge detected behind the enemy flagship. The tactical display expanded automatically. A massive ring-shaped structure, previously hidden within the darkness, slowly emerged into view. It was nearly 300 miles across, covered in symbols that matched the ancient crystal archives. Marcus stared at the impossible structure. That has been sitting out there this whole time. Brooks quietly replied, longer than recorded history. Back inside the council chamber, panic began spreading among the delegates. Admiral Soren Tal pointed toward the growing energy signatures. They are opening something. Varesh immediately ordered every remaining fleet into defensive formation. But before the command could be transmitted, every military system across Prime suddenly shut down for exactly 3 seconds. When power returned, every tactical display showed the same message. Human command authority temporarily recognized. Varesh slowly lowered his hands from the console. How can our systems recognize authority that was never entered into council records? No one could explain it. On the Resolute, Grace looked toward Brooks. Admiral, every defense network in the system just deferred to Terran authorization. Brooks closed his eyes for only a moment before opening them again. Because they finally remembered who built the protocol. The ancient figure on the screen inclined its head for the first time. Then the descendants still carry the burden. Brooks answered in the same calm voice. We never stopped. Without another word, the enormous ring behind the enemy fleet began rotating, and from its center, a faint blue light slowly emerged, revealing that the true crisis had not yet begun. The pale blue light inside the ancient ring grew brighter with every passing second, spreading across the surrounding stars like the first hint of dawn. Every sensor in the system struggled to interpret what it was seeing. The readings refused to settle on numbers that made sense. Lieutenant Grace Donovan looked up from her station. The energy output keeps changing. It is almost like it is responding to us. Admiral Nathan Brooks stepped closer to the forward display. Not to us. He paused. To the gate itself. Commander Marcus Hale frowned. If that thing opens, what comes through? Brooks answered honestly. I do not know. Nobody alive does. That single sentence carried more weight than any warning. Across the council chamber, Chancellor Varesh watched helplessly as every remaining defense fleet assembled around Prime. Hundreds of warships formed defensive lines, but none dared move closer to the enormous ring. Admiral Soren Tal finally broke the silence. We cannot just watch this happen. Varesh nodded slowly. Then what do you suggest? Tal pointed toward the display. Destroy the ring before it finishes activating. Several council members immediately objected. What if that makes things worse? Tal shook his head. Doing nothing already has. Without waiting for a vote, he transmitted direct orders to the combined defense fleet. All batteries, target the structure. Fire on my command. On the bridge of the Resolute, alarms echoed across every console. Grace looked up sharply. Council fleets are locking weapons on the gate. Marcus muttered under his breath. They are about to make a terrible mistake. Brooks reached for the fleet channel. Broadcast on every frequency. Seconds later, his calm voice reached every military vessel in the system. Do not fire. If you attack that structure, you will finish what the enemy started. Admiral Tal answered almost immediately. You expect us to trust information you have hidden from the galaxy for centuries? Brooks remained calm. No. I expect you to survive the next 5 minutes. Tal ended the transmission without another word. A heartbeat later, hundreds of brilliant streaks crossed the darkness as the combined defense fleet launched a synchronized strike toward the ring. Every observer held their breath. The projectiles never reached their target. They slowed to a stop less than 1 mile from the glowing structure, suspended motionless as though space itself had decided they could go no farther. Then, one by one, they gently drifted away before dissolving into harmless streams of light. No explosion, no shockwave, simply erased. Silence swept across every bridge in the galaxy. Even Admiral Tal found himself speechless. Then the ancient figure appeared once more on every screen. This time it was looking past Brooks, toward the Council fleets. Predictable, it said quietly. Fear continues to choose poorly. Before anyone could respond, the blue light inside the ring suddenly collapsed inward, shrinking into a single point no larger than a marble. Grace whispered. Energy levels just dropped to 0. Marcus stared at the display. That cannot be right. Brooks narrowed his eyes. Brace. The point of light expanded again in an instant, not outward like an explosion, but inward, revealing a vast corridor beyond the ring where no stars existed at all. It looked less like empty space and more like a doorway opening onto another reality. Every ship in the system drifted slightly toward it, as invisible forces pulled at space itself. Olivia Carter watched the phenomenon from the archive and quickly searched the remaining records. One final encrypted document unlocked automatically. She read the first line aloud, her voice barely above a whisper. The gate was never built to keep something out. Her eyes widened as she continued reading. It was built to keep the Guardian in. She immediately contacted Brooks. Nathan, we misunderstood everything. Brooks closed his eyes for one brief moment before answering. I know. The ancient figure slowly turned its attention away from humanity and toward the opening corridor. For the first time since its arrival, uncertainty appeared across its face. Then it spoke 3 words that sent a chill through every listener in the galaxy. It is awake. The words echoed through every command center in the galaxy. It is awake. Nobody asked who it was. Nobody needed to. Every instinct told them that whatever rested beyond the gate existed on a scale no living civilization had ever imagined. The glowing corridor remained perfectly still, yet every sensor continued reporting impossible gravitational shifts spreading for millions of miles in every direction. Lieutenant Grace Donovan struggled to keep up with the incoming data. Space around the gate is rewriting itself. Physical constants are fluctuating. Commander Marcus Hale shook his head. That should not even be possible. Admiral Nathan Brooks stood motionless, watching the corridor as though he had expected this moment all along. It was always possible, he said quietly. We simply forgot. On Prime, Chancellor Varesh finally abandoned protocol. He opened a direct channel to Brooks without consulting the Council. Admiral, enough secrets. If humanity knows what is happening, then tell us now. Brooks answered after several seconds of silence. The truth will not calm anyone. It is too late for comfort, Varesh replied. We need answers. Brooks looked toward Grace. She understood immediately and transferred an encrypted archive to every Council terminal. Thousands of classified Terran records appeared at once. The first page carried a date older than any surviving galactic calendar. The title read, First Contact Report. The delegates stared in disbelief. Humanity had not discovered intelligent life first. Humanity had documented it first. Dr. Olivia Carter watched as the Council opened the files one after another. Ancient maps, forgotten treaties, fragments of civilizations long believed mythical, all carried the same unmistakable Terran authentication codes. Olivia quietly whispered, We were never the newest civilization. Brooks continued speaking, his calm voice reaching every ship in orbit. Long before Earth became the world you know, our ancestors served as observers. We were never rulers. We were never conquerors. We were witnesses. Admiral Soren Tal interrupted sharply. You expect us to believe humans have hidden this for thousands of years. Brooks answered without hesitation. No, I expect you to understand why. Before Tal could respond, every display aboard every vessel suddenly shifted. The corridor inside the gate brightened, revealing countless distant lights moving with deliberate precision. They were not stars. They were structures. Entire cities floated beyond the opening, suspended in impossible silence. Grace stared at the image. Those are inhabited. Olivia compared the architecture with the recovered archives. Her voice became almost inaudible. No, they were inhabited. The ancient figure finally spoke again. They remained asleep because the keepers honored their oath. Brooks quietly finished the sentence. Until the oath was broken. The figure turned toward him. Your council fired upon the seal. Across the chamber, every delegate slowly looked toward Admiral Tau. His confidence vanished. We were trying to protect the galaxy. The ancient figure showed neither anger nor satisfaction. Intent changes nothing. Suddenly, the entire corridor trembled. One of the silent cities drifted closer to the opening before stopping just beyond the threshold. Massive towers reflected pale blue light across the surrounding fleet. Then, for the first time, movement appeared inside the abandoned streets. Grace felt a chill despite herself. Multiple contacts, emerging. Brooks remained perfectly calm, but Marcus noticed something different. For the first time since the crisis began, Brooks tightened his grip on the command rail. It was almost invisible, but it was enough. Marcus quietly asked, Nathan, have you seen them before? Brooks answered without taking his eyes off the city beyond the gate. No. Marcus looked at him in surprise. Brooks slowly exhaled. Only the stories. Then a calm voice unlike any heard before spread across every frequency in every known language at the same time. Humanity, after all this time, you still kept your promise. The mysterious voice faded, but its final words lingered across every bridge in the galaxy like an echo no one could escape. Humanity, after all this time, you still kept your promise. No alarms sounded. No weapons locked on targets. For the first time since the crisis began, the silence no longer felt threatening. It felt expectant. Admiral Nathan Brooks slowly stepped toward the main display. Open a secure channel. Lieutenant Grace Donovan nodded. The channel is open. Brooks spoke with quiet respect. The promise was never ours alone. We only carried it forward. A gentle glow spread through the ancient city beyond the gate. Tower after tower awakened, not with flashes of military power, but with warm lights that stretched across countless streets. It looked less like a fortress and more like a home waiting for its people to return. Inside the council chamber, Chancellor Varesh could barely believe what he was seeing. Those cities, they have been there all this time. Dr. Olivia Carter answered through the shared communication link. Hidden behind the gate. Hidden by history itself. She continued reviewing the last untranslated archive. I found the missing pages. Brooks glanced toward the display. Read them. Olivia took a slow breath before speaking. The first keepers were never one species. They were volunteers from many civilizations. When the Guardian agreed to sleep beyond the gate, someone had to remain outside to make sure nobody disturbed the seal. Every civilization eventually disappeared, except one. Admiral Soren Tau lowered his head. Humanity. Olivia nodded. Our ancestors accepted the final watch because Earth was far from every major trade route at the time. Nobody expected anyone to notice us. The ancient figure inclined its head once more. The keepers fulfilled their oath with honor. Tal finally found the courage to ask the question everyone had avoided. Then why return now? The answer came from the figure instead of Brooks. Because fear overcame wisdom. Every eye turned toward the damaged ring. The seal remained stable for thousands of generations. It weakened only after repeated attempts to force it open. Varesh looked around the chamber with growing disbelief. You mean this was not caused today? No, the figure replied. Many civilizations searched for forgotten power across the centuries. Every unauthorized attempt weakened the barrier. Today's attack merely completed what countless mistakes had already begun. An uncomfortable silence spread through the council. Nobody could blame a single empire. Pride, curiosity, and ambition had slowly created the crisis together. Grace suddenly looked up from her console. Admiral, the gravitational distortion is stabilizing. Marcus Hale frowned. Without us doing anything? Brooks gave a slight smile. Not without us. Because someone finally remembered the truth. The enormous ring gradually slowed until it stopped rotating altogether. The corridor remained open, but its violent energy had vanished. The ancient city beyond the threshold no longer appeared abandoned. Countless lights shimmered peacefully beneath an unfamiliar sky. Then the calm voice returned one final time. The watch is complete. Humanity is released from its duty. Grace quietly whispered, after all these years. Brooks remained silent for several moments. Finally he answered, no. Marcus looked toward him in confusion. No. Brooks folded his hands behind his back. Duty does not end because someone gives you permission. It ends when the next generation is ready to carry it. Before anyone could respond, every ship in orbit received the same transmission. A complete archive of forgotten galactic history flowed into every database simultaneously. Names once erased returned. Lost civilizations reappeared. Ancient alliances were restored. The greatest secret in the galaxy no longer belonged to humanity alone. As the final files finished downloading, Olivia noticed one document that had not been included with the others. It carried only a single line addressed personally to Admiral Nathan Brooks. She opened a private channel and read it aloud. Keeper Brooks, one final task remains. Come alone. Admiral Nathan Brooks looked at the private message one last time before handing command of the Terran formation to Commander Marcus Hale. You have the fleet. Marcus frowned. You are actually going alone? Brooks offered the faintest smile. Some roads were never meant to be crowded. Lieutenant Grace Donovan stepped forward. Sir, we cannot even guarantee what is waiting beyond that gate. Brooks nodded. Neither could the people who stood this watch before us. Without another word, a small shuttle separated from the TSS Resolute and crossed the quiet distance toward the ancient city. For the first time in thousands of years, the gate welcomed a visitor instead of a guardian. Every ship in orbit watched the tiny shuttle disappear into the soft blue light. Inside the council chamber, nobody spoke. Chancellor Varesh quietly lowered his head. Admiral Soren Tal stood beside him without a single argument left to make. The galaxy that had once measured strength by fleet size and military rank had just discovered that its greatest protector had never asked for recognition. Brooks landed inside a peaceful plaza surrounded by towering buildings that looked untouched by time. The air was still. Water flowed through narrow stone channels. Trees unlike anything on Earth stretched toward a sky filled with unfamiliar constellations. Waiting in the center of the plaza stood the ancient figure that had spoken to humanity since the beginning of the crisis. Up close, it appeared less like a warrior and more like an old traveler finally reaching home. Nathan Brooks, it said softly. The final keeper. Brooks shook his head. Only the latest. The figure smiled for the first time. That answer proves we chose correctly. It extended one hand, revealing a small crystal unlike the archives Olivia had uncovered. Inside the crystal shimmered countless tiny lights, each one representing a name. Every keeper who came before you is remembered here. None sought glory. None asked to be honored. They simply believed that protecting strangers was worth more than being remembered. Brooks accepted the crystal carefully. The lights shifted until one empty place remained. There is still room for one more name, the figure said. Brooks looked at the empty space for several seconds before closing his hand. Leave it empty. Why? Brooks looked back toward the distant stars where Terran and alien ships now floated together instead of facing one another. Because the next keeper should earn it, not inherit it. The ancient figure nodded with quiet satisfaction. Then the future truly belongs to them. Moments later, the city began fading into light. Not collapsing, not disappearing. Simply returning to a place beyond ordinary space where its purpose had finally ended. The massive ring slowly folded into itself until only ordinary stars remained. Across the galaxy, navigation systems updated automatically. The Black Rift vanished from every chart because there was nothing left to fear there. Days later, the Galactic Council gathered once more. This time, no emergency alarms interrupted the meeting. Chancellor Varesh rose and addressed every civilization. For generations, we believed peace came from power. We were wrong. Peace survived because someone accepted responsibility without asking for applause. He invited Admiral Brooks to stand before the council and receive the highest honor in galactic history. Brooks quietly declined. Give it to the engineers who rebuilt your stations. Give it to the pilots who evacuated families. Give it to the historians who refused to erase difficult truths. I was never alone. After the meeting, Olivia Carter joined Brooks outside the chamber overlooking the stars. She smiled. Do you think anyone will believe this story 1,000 years from now? Brooks looked toward the quiet sky, where the last trace of the gate had disappeared. Probably not. Olivia laughed softly. Does that bother you? Brooks slipped the crystal into his jacket pocket before answering. Not really. The people who need credit are usually the ones least interested in receiving it. Together, they watched civilian ships resume their ordinary routes. Children returned to schools. Merchants reopened forgotten trade lanes. And explorers prepare to map the galaxy again. This time with humility instead of pride. Long after the fleets were forgotten and the politicians became footnotes in history, one lesson endured in every corner of known space. Humanity was never extraordinary because it possessed greater weapons or older secrets. Humanity became extraordinary because when nobody was watching, and when no reward was promised, ordinary men and women quietly chose to protect a future they might never live to see. And in the end, the greatest legacy anyone can leave is not being remembered forever, but making sure those who come after you have the chance to build a better tomorrow.